Welcome to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. Thank you for your service.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Bulletproof Veteran Podcast. This interview is one that's been in the making for some time, at least in my head, because I got turned on to Patrol Base Abbate a little while back. And I started following them online. I started following what they were doing, the whole idea of returning to base, the idea of community, these kind of like go on a retreat and be together like we used to be when we would deploy or we were with our unit, whether that was overseas for Christmas, everybody would get together or whatever because you were away from your family. And I've always loved that idea, and I've always kind of wanted to do that myself. And that's exactly what Patrol Base Abbate was doing. I didn't realize this was going to morph into so much more, and we're going to get into why that is the case. But I have on the show today Major Tom Schueman. He is a U.S. Marine. He's currently a student while in the Marines. He's at one of the war colleges up in Rhode Island. So, Tom, thank you so much for coming on the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Well, like we usually do on this show, I love to hear a little bit about the person that we're talking to, because that kind of sets us up for everything that you've been doing. And you've had kind of an amazing past. You've been through a lot, and it's amazing to see what you've kind of come through and become, dating back to past 2010 in Afghanistan. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My least favorite topic. I like talking about the Marines I served with, that kind of stuff a lot more. I'm an infantry Marine. I'm a JTAC. I'm an advisor. 2 deployments Afghanistan, a deployment as company commander Australia, and a husband and a dad to 3 kids. And I think that really kind of gives you everything you need to know about me. And so happy to continue to push and talk about stuff that's a lot more interesting.
Yeah, not a problem at all. I always like to focus on the dad stuff because I'm a new dad myself. I have one, a 3-year-old, and I feel like it's kind of created my whole life now. It's kind of changed everything. My mindset is different. Everything I do is different now since she's been born. And it always amazed me, my friends that had kids while they were in the military and what they must be going through. Because I couldn't even, I was 19, 20 years old when I was in, and no kids, just was able to do whatever I wanted. It has to be such a balance being an infantry officer with children.
Yeah, it has changed me significantly, and it changes your priorities. And now I have to be consistently more reflective in thinking about how am I leading 24/7? I was good about going to work and leading because I was a platoon commander or a company commander. But now at home, I'm setting an example, and that example is always being observed. And so how do I lead myself? How do I conduct myself? And then how do I lead my family? It's something that I think, is my most important work. The people that are the most important that I'll lead will be, my 3 kids and my wife. And so starting here, starting in the home is really where my leadership focus is now. And the challenges with the military are, you have to have a spouse who knows ahead of time what they're getting into, because this is not for the faint of heart. And we've had 4 moves in 3 years.
Wow.
Each of our kids were born in a different hospital. One was born at Walter Reed, one was born up in Annapolis, and one was just born in Newport, Rhode Island. Right. And and we're moving again next summer, and so having someone who is willing to stick that out, and my wife, understands that this is a life or death job, and that I'm going to go to work every day. And I'm going to be very, very invested in preparing these young Marines for combat. And what's wild is that, I haven't been in the fleet since I've had kids. I was at Georgetown in the Naval Academy, and now I'm at the War College. And so I'll head back to the fleet next year. And I think I'll be like a lot more empathetic to the family situation than when I was a single, officer throughout the first 10 years of my career, where it was just like, I'm just like push. And now that there's something at home that needs my attention and needs my leadership as well, I guess we'll have to kind of to figure that out. But I do think it takes a really solid spouse, wife to we talk about servant leadership. She is a servant leader, right? Like, she gets up at 6 a.m., is in the fight, in the trenches, hooking and jabbing all day. And, the last kid gets put down at 2100, 06 to 2100, no breaks. The kids are not on a synchronized nap schedule, 3 kids under 3. And there's zero time for her between 06 and 2100, 7 days a week, and no credit, no glory, no award, there is a reward, but no award, right? There's a significant reward in that. But I've been really in awe of just watching her lead. But again, I think it takes a special person to be able to lead on the home front, to allow me to continue to do what I'm doing and developing myself, developing my subordinates for this kind of profession. So I think it has been radical.
And I love to highlight it. And also, and the reason that I kind of brought it up was because it has to change how you lead your Marines. Like you said, I think not that it changes your leadership style per se, but it gives you a different perspective, like you stated, but also it kind of, once you have that parental instinct in you, I think it permeates through the rest of your life. Even if you're still a hard charger, you're still beating the hell out of them when they need it, but you take on that parent role much easier. I think it does change you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been an adopted father since I've been 22, and I adopted 35 Marines at Kilo 1st Platoon. But when Sun Tzu said, treat them like your sons and daughters, they'll carry you through the deepest valleys, right? And so I've always believed that. General Lejeune had a similar kind of mentality about leadership. But once you actually are a biological father, I think it does add some additional layers to kind of how you'll view these people who your surrogate family that I'm going to have here again in the next couple of years. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that kind of leads me into why I reached out to you this particular time. It's that family, and the family that we're talking about is of your interpreter, Zach. You were very open on social media about the struggle to try to get Zach out of country actually you started like 5 years ago. So I don't even want to say that it was just this past August or since May or since April, since the drawdown, whatever you want to talk about. You started 5 years ago trying to get him the visa to get out and get his family out. But it really accelerated just this past month. And it was not just Zach, it was Zach and his family. Can you tell us a little bit about Zach, the man who you describe as a true warrior, as a friend, somebody that stood by Marines, that went above and beyond just being an interpreter?
Sure. I always make the same offer to my Marines, and it's a lifelong commitment. And that just because I'm no longer, your commander, or just because you're not in uniform anymore, doesn't mean that my service to you ends, right? And it's a nice thing to say, but it's another thing to do. And you get every week for over a decade. I'm applying to whatever police department. Can you do the reference or late call when they're in a bad spot? And so to maintain that lifelong commitment, I think is it's something that every leader I would hope would commit to. And Zach is, to me, one of my Marines, and my Marines are my family, right? And you don't abandon your family when they need you. And in 2010, most interpreters were refusing to go to Sengen. Most interpreters who were in Sengen were quitting, and it was the most dangerous, deadly place in the world. And to get an interpreter who was, one, skilled at actually translating, but two, willing to stick it out with us, and three, when, like you mentioned, this went above and beyond the duty of just merely translating. And whether that was when Zach ran through a minefield to detain a Taliban commander, whether that was when I had multiple amputee casualties and Zach picked up one of their rifles to start to help provide security as we were still under fire. Just things that, and a lot of time interpreters, as soon as you get in contact, they would just be like, I'm out, I'm going to lay down. And when everything is good again, I'll get back up. And that's fine. Like, there's no expectation that they don't do that. Right. Mm-hmm. But that was never Zach. And he really did kind of just become another one of my Marines. And we stayed in touch through Facebook. And then he went and was serving with the Army for a couple of years after the Marines. And then 2016, he says, sir, I'm putting together this application for this special immigration visa, SIV. It was a program I think started in 2009 I think 2009 that said, if you serve with the U.S., you will be issued a visa to come to the U.S. It was pretty straightforward. Serve with the U.S., we give you a visa. So I said, yeah, let's do it. How can I help? And so we fill out the applications and we get everything submitted. And at the same time, the Department of State had what I kind of feel like is arbitrarily increased the time of service from 1 year to 2 years. So it was always, if you had 1 year of service verified, you were good. Well, Zach had 3 years of service, but only his time with the Marines was verified. So we had the 1 year, which if we had applied the year before would have been sufficient. And now it's not. And we tried to get a hold of the contracting company that he worked with when he was at the Army. They're defunct. Can't get a hold of them. And so for an entire year, we worked this application. From 2016 to 17, we're doing appeals and rebuttals. And there's a really sad message. I went back, through our messages recently, and there's a message in December of 2017, almost over a little bit over a year of us trying to submit this package. And he says, sir, have a good life. Tell my friends hello. I'm going to go teach these boys English now. And, Zach had given up on the process. And we really didn't know like what we could do. It seemed like that there was no appeal process. There seemed like there was no way around this. And so you've got a defunct company who cannot provide the verified service and a system that says you must provide the service or you cannot pass phase 1. And there are tens of thousands of interpreters who are in the same exact boat where these contracting companies have gone defunct and they can't prove or verify their service. And so 2021 April, the president announces that we'll be out by the end of August. And I asked Zach, what does that mean to you? And he says, well, sir, the Taliban already control most of my province. And once you all leave, it means that we'll be dead. He said, I just received for over 10 years, even while he was with us, the Taliban already knew who he was and were already threatening him. And he said, if you don't help me, we'll be executed.
Well, they had his cell phone, correct? They were like sending him threats. They basically were saying, listen, we're going to get you. It's just a matter of time.
Yep. We killed a guy in 2010 who had, an AK and a radio on him. And when we took the radio and the weapon, the Taliban knew, and they came over the radio and they said, "We know who you are, Zaki. We know your province." So he had a target on his back since 2010, and he had, received night letters to his father's house, and many phone calls and texts threatening. And so he's been persecuted.
Mm-hmm.
He's been persecuted based on his service with the U.S., which is why we created a special immigration visa for people who face persecution due to their service with the U.S.
Of course.
Seems like that was like a good idea that somebody had. And then this, unable to grant him what he rates because we can't find a piece of paper. And so he says, "Yep, I'll be executed. My family will be killed if we don't get out of here." And so in April, I posted on my Instagram and I said, "Hey, I need anybody's support. I've been working this thing for 5 years. My interpreter is going to be killed. Can anybody help?" And so that was my first kind of plea in April. And I said, the Taliban are, and we're calling all of this stuff, the Taliban are going to take over. They're going to, mm-hmm. And this is in April. And so, this digital Dunkirk has become this kind of this thing. And it's, basically a collection of veterans who are using different networks to help run these operations to support their interpreters, which really picked up traction, I think, mid-August. But we were definitely on the front edge of this digital Dunkirk, using the digital space to rally support around the interpreters. And so a couple small newspapers picked up Zaks' story in April and May, and my mom writes the president, writes the vice president, writes Chicago Tribune. We're from Chicago, and finally the Chicago Tribune guy says, "Your mom won't leave me alone. What's going on with your interpreter?" And so in June, we're on the front page of the Chicago Sun-Times, and it reaches Senator Durbin's desk, and mm-hmm. Senator Durbin is in a confirmation hearing with the Secretary of State and says, "I have a Major Tom Schueman, one of my constituents. He's got an interpreter. They're in the Chicago Sun-Times." And he's talking to Secretary Blinken, the head of the Secretary of State. And he says, "Can you help him?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, okay, we're good." The head of the Department of State is got our case for action. The guy who gets to, nope. Mm-hmm. And it was every time I felt like, it's like those false summits. Every time I felt a little bit hopeful, like we might be able to, we were coming around the current corner or whatever, it just could not move the needle.
And the scary part of this is you're talking about phase 1. Phase 2, where they do the actual interview, the lie detector test. You have to get to an embassy, which for a lot of the Afghanis is almost impossible because they're going through areas that they just can't travel. It's not like, "Hey, we're going to take my car and drive to Kabul." It doesn't work that way. I mean, just so for anybody out there that doesn't understand the situation, we've talked about it on the show, a couple of times. Phase 2, I think the average time was almost a year in phase 2. And you aren't even in that yet.
That is an accurate depiction of the process. Overall, these visas were taking about 4 years, mm-hmm. 3 to 4 years. And so, we're not in phase 2, and it's April, May, June, and we know that we're out in, 3 or 4 months, right? So you do the math, not a math guy, but that doesn't check out.
Right.
And so then we get on in July, we're on the cover of the New York Times. It's like, okay, we're on the cover of the New York Times with this. This is going to be our breakthrough. Lots of people reaching out to support, I talked to probably 100 different lawyers, probably 25 different congressmen. Everybody says, "Oh, I'd like to help." none of that actually materializes into anything tangible that actually moves this case forward. We were on Rachel Maddow twice. And so the first time we're on Rachel Maddow, Zach actually joins the call. And at the end of the call, he says, please, Mr. President, please help me. And he makes this really kind of this pathos, this plea, this emotional plea. And again, we garner a bunch of support. Nothing. And I reach out to a buddy who's flying medevacs in Kabul at the airfield, and I reached out to him in July. He's the first person I knew who was going to kind of support the evacuation. And I said, what's going to happen? Are they going to tell people, hey, are we going to go pick people up? First off, because Zaks in Kunar. Mm-hmm. Are we sending people to Kunar? He's like, absolutely not. And I was like, well, do you think he's going to receive an email that says come to Kabul? And he's like, no. I'm like, okay. So he's like, if he's not in Kabul and near the airport, he's not getting out. And I'm like, okay. So this is middle of July. I tell Zach, hey, you got to leave. And end up sending him $5,000, which was an ordeal in and of itself. Getting the Western Union transfer was very difficult. And he goes multiple Taliban checkpoints, is shaken down, all kind of stuff to get to Kabul. Then he can't find a place in Kabul because there are tens of thousands of Afghans coming to Kabul at the time, right? And so then
everybody's doing this.
Yes. And so I sent him a bunch more monies to kind of get him to be able to get an apartment. And then he sends for his family. And like, this is all happening in the middle of July where I'm not sleeping because I know he's traveling or his family's traveling and he's 8.5 hours ahead of time. And I'm worried that, he's going to get executed at one of these Taliban checkpoints. And this is when like province after province is falling. This is like when things are getting, starting to go down very fast. And
by mid-July, I think what they say was like 70% of the country was in Taliban control by mid-July. By beginning of August, it was 99%. I mean, they were just basically waiting. Once Kandahar fell, it was, just waiting on Kabul.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's not a great time to be a U.S. Supporter traveling through Afghanistan. And so we get his family in there by the end of July. They're all in Kabul, which, like I said, was quite an ordeal in and of itself. He's going for the passports. He comes back and says, sir, they say the passports will take 3 to 4 months. But if I give them, $400 a passport, they can have them within 24 hours. So I send him over the money for each passport. He gets 4 of the 6. He's got 4 kids under the age of 5. They don't have his wife's passport. They don't have one of his kids' passport the next day. Then he goes back the next day. And by the way, each day he's getting there at 4 a.m. and he's waiting in line for 12 hours, no food, no water, no bathroom, because thousands of other people are at the post office trying to get passports right now as well. Mm-hmm. He gets his daughter's passport. So now he's got 5 of the 6. And so basically each day up until when Kabul fell, Zach was leaving his family, going to the post office and waiting all day in pretty rough conditions to see if they had found his wife's passport. He's at the post office when Kabul starts to fall, and he is taking a video of people running in the streets and all this kind of stuff, and it's pretty wild. And it was interesting because Nightline was at my house the day that Kabul fell, and so we were to do a piece on Zach, and this whole time we're still operating under the assumption that we have until the end of the month, that we've got until August 31st. We're going to still try to do the system the right way, and it'll work out, and we just need to and now it was August 15th, 16th, 17th, something like that. And now it's like, okay, change of plans right now. He's got to get out right now. And I was re-engage with social media. I found a company commander who a friend of mine knew well and put us in contact. And I started talking to him, and it was company commander in 1-8. And he says, send him to the gate. This is on a Sunday. Send him to the gate and I'll get him in. So I said, Zach, you got to leave right now. And Zach says, well, it's almost a 4-mile walk to the airport. And I got 4 kids and a wife and 2 suitcases and all, I got to carry most of these kids because they're 1 year old, 2 years old. And can you send someone to get me? And I'm like, I'm trying to find, no, I can't, you got to walk. And so they walk, get shaken down at Taliban checkpoints. They get to the airport right as the wall is breached. And that's when all those people flooded onto the tarmac.
And everybody remembers that kind of picture of everybody rushing the tarmac. It was basically chaos. You could forget about trying to link up with somebody to get safety at that point.
And so the Marines just closed the gate.
Right.
And so there was, and so then of course, that's when my friend who says, send him, I'm like, he's on his way. He's like, Roger, I'm here at the gate waiting. I'm like, okay, great. I'm like, 20 minutes later, I'm like, he's there. And now there's no comm, right? No comm. And my last kind of standing order was I'll get him through the gate. And so I'm not really at the time totally tracking on how massive this breach is and what's going on. And so Zach ends up spending, 8 hours outside the gate with thousands of people rushing and Taliban shooting and no food, no water with all these kids. And finally, the Taliban were shooting so much that he walks home with his family. It was a pretty traumatic day for him and his family. And it was our first failure at trying to get out. And 24 hours later, the company commander is back on a different gate, and he says, I'm at this gate again. If you send him now, I think I can get him through. And so now Zach's like, I'm not walking, and I'm putting out feelers to social media. Is there anybody that can kind of support? And a random British officer reaches out to me and says, I got a guy who's Afghan on the ground. He was an interpreter as well. He contracts for me now. He's got balls of steel. His name's Malad, and he'll drive Zach. And so this guy Malad drives Zach and the family to the gate. They get to the gate. Zach sends me a picture of the gate. I send that picture to the company commander. He goes, he's at the right spot. We'll get him.
And now is this the picture of like where he was like so close? He was right there. This was the second attempt.
Yep.
I remember this. Yeah. Okay.
We'll get him. And I receive a message, we'll get him. And Zach sends a picture, he's literally, there's a Lance Corporal right in front of him. Same thing. Because of the crowd started to overwhelm the gate and they stopped all processing. Taliban starts shooting. Zach is sending me a video trying to talk to me, and his daughter's sitting in his lap. She's crying. And then the Taliban starts shooting right over their head, and she starts screaming. It's horrible.
Horrible.
Malad the whole time is getting pressured and shot at by the Taliban to leave. But I asked if he would stay to make sure that Zach got in. And so this guy is, even though he's being shot at, is keeping the car near the gate to make sure that Zach gets through. After they start shooting over his family's head, Zach jumps in the vehicle, goes back. Failure number 2. So close. And now trying to convince Zach to go back to the airport. He's, basically not interested. It's like, send someone to get me. I need, kind of assurances.
Because every time he takes his kids and his family out into this, it could be the last time. That's the thing. I think that's the part that so many Americans are not grasping, especially civilians and people that are a little disconnected from this. These people are risking just stepping out their front door. They are completely risking their lives and the lives of their family every single time they even attempt this. It's amazing.
Yeah. through the Taliban checkpoints, which, I mean, the people who've been telling you we're looking for you and going to kill you for 10 years, you know, and now you got to get their permission to get to the airport. I mean, how do you think that's got to be just terrifying? And so then we developed 4 courses of action. One was we had basically like a special operations mission where they were going to go out and get him and his family, and due to incredible amounts of support, like that was actually developing, like that might be a real thing that could have happened. That was like working its way through the approval process. Course of action number 2 had a high degree of complexity, but also a very high degree of success. And so there was like an unmarked CIA gate that basically, if he could figure out where that gate was, he had to just kind of wave a yellow flag or whatever, and someone was going to come out and get him. And the issue was Zach had really hard time kind of getting to the places we were trying to get him. And because, you know, he doesn't have Google Maps. And so we're just using imagery and trying to correlate. And so this one would have been nice because he wouldn't have been where the crowds were. Someone would exit the gate, come out to get him, but trying to find an unmarked spot along the airport wall with the kids, with everything, was just a little bit more complicated than I thought we would be able to execute. Mm-hmm. Course of action 3 was an identifiable gate that there was a challenge and password, and that Zach had been put on a list. And this was developed by a female Air Force major who's at the Air Force War College here stateside. She somehow hears of Zach's case, and she's reached out to me and said, I got Zach on a list at this specific gate. He needs to ask for this person and then give this password, and he'll get in. And she said, I just did this with someone. It'll work. And I'm like, okay. And then course of action number 4 is my friend says he's back on the gate again, and that he can, I've got a Marine back on the gate, and he says I can get him in. So we decided to go with course of action number 3, an easily identifiable gate with a challenge and password. Malad drives Zach again to the airport. By the way, on the second attempt, Malad's father-in-law is murdered for supporting Zach. And Malad never says anything. I don't find out until all this is over that he's had his father-in-law murdered for supporting the U.S. and the interpreters. And this guy goes and supports him again on his 3rd trip to the airport, drives his family there again.
Well, like you said, the description is balls of steel that this guy has to do this, and he's definitely living up to that. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, he dropped Zach off, and Zach goes to the wrong gate. And he sends me a picture, and I'm able to kind of correlate where he's at. And I'm trying to tell Zach, you need to go 500 meters east or to the right of the gate that you're currently at. That's the gate that if you give your name, they're waiting. And basically, the Taliban is between him and that gate. There's thousands of people pressing, and he's just saying, basically says, I can't move. I need you just to send somebody to get me. And I'm like, Zach, you're 500 meters away. Just go along the wall to the right. You'll get in. And he's like, I can't do it. So I call a buddy, the buddy who was my Marine friend since 2008. And I say, hey, I don't call him. I send him a message on Signal, and I say, I need your support. He says, I'm currently in the operations center. I'm watching things go on right now. I'm waiting for, any medevacs that need to be flown. I really can't support. He said, I'm looking at the gate he's at right now. There's thousands of people. It's a total shit show out there. And I'm like, man, I need you to go get him. And he grabs a team with PJs and rescue men, and he jumps up on that gate, and we're in a group WhatsApp text with Zach and him. And he's saying, Zach, look up at the gate. I'm in a black t-shirt. I've got a helmet on. I've got a yellow vest over my flak jacket. Wave to me, and Zach can't see him and can't identify him. And we had sent him a picture of what Zach's family was wearing that day, and they were wearing his son was wearing a blue T-shirt, and so he tells Zach, Zach, put your son on your shoulders, and then doesn't get anything. He says, Zach, put your son with the blue shirt on your shoulders, and then radio silence for over an hour, and the next message is, we got him, and he had to jump into the crowd, with these PJs, working with the Marines next to the Taliban, fights through, hundreds of people and pulls them through the canal, pulls them over the wall. And just an absolute tons of courage and heroism for this guy and his team to go out there and get Zach, tons of courage and heroism from Zach to kind of be where he was, doing what he was doing. And, and the thing is, like, within 24 hours, the situation just deteriorated rapidly. And so the Taliban started to search the neighborhood that he was in and started to execute people in that neighborhood. So had he not been out, he likely would have been executed. They had completely stopped processing any SIVs. They were kicking even SIVs that got inside. They were kicking them out because they said, we're only taking American citizens and green card holders. And that situation at the gate got worse and worse. And it's when people started to camping, people started to camp there for days at a time because you could no longer get through the Taliban checkpoints. The Taliban was keeping everybody out. And I mean, had he not got through when he got through, who knows?
Chances are it wouldn't have happened. It would have ended a much different way. But it didn't. You did get him through, and he got to Qatar.
Yep.
Where he sent you a voice message, which you shared on Instagram. And unless you have a heart of freaking stone, if that doesn't bring a tear to your eye when you listen, if anybody got a chance to listen to that message from Zach talking about how his family is safe, that's a tearjerker for sure. Just amazing work.
Yeah, and Zach is such a good and humble person, and throughout all this, he's just saying, like, dear sir, while he's under fire, and thank you so much, and just so polite, and through it all, and really just going through hell, and just being a great man to his family, and trying to hold it together, and just trying to be a dad taking care of his kids, and something that you and I could both empathize with. And he's very thankful. He's in transit. I don't know where he's at. I lost count with him a couple of days ago. He sent me a picture that he's at the terminal in Qatar and said, we're leaving. I don't know where. And I think this is pretty common, though, from talking to other people, is that when they fly out of Qatar, you won't hear from them for a couple of days. And so he's safe, and hopefully he'll be here stateside within the next 24 hours is the hope. So,
and do you have some type of a plan for him once he reaches stateside? Because that's another thing that isn't really getting talked about all that much just yet. I know there are some people that are focusing on it, but these people are coming with nothing. No money. They have no support. They may or may not have completed paperwork and proper paperwork to actually get a green card to stay in this country. That's still unknown what's going to happen with all these people. Do you have some type of a plan for Zach?
Yeah. I think it's at least about 30 days at one of the U.S. military bases. I know the DOD is absolutely making a Herculean effort to take care of these folks, but everybody's logistics are being very challenged, and conditions aren't great. And so once I know what base he's at, I'm sure that I'll be able to tap into some local support there. We started a GoFundMe in July, June, and so all these GoFundMe's were all coming online in the middle of August, and everybody all of a sudden in August was very invested in helping their interpreter. And GoFundMe froze our fundraiser because so many were starting. And when I got on the phone with GoFundMe, I was saying, like, this is a fundraiser that was started 2 months ago that you vetted, verified, where I've already transferred $10,000 from this, GoFundMe to the actual recipient. Like, I know you're getting a lot of new folks. This is something that's so I think we've got a decent amount of money in the GoFundMe to continue to kind of support him. We started a Facebook group, Zak to Texas. When I asked Zak, where do you want to go? He said, I've got family in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. Super important to kind of get them with someone to help them resettle and their to culturally acclimate, mm-hmm. and so he wanted San Antonio, so that's what we're doing, and so we started a Facebook group, Zak to Texas. We started an email account, Zak to Texas at Gmail, ZAK, and because there were so many people who were also touched by this story who wanted to support, that it became overwhelming to try to keep track of all the different messages. And so, I don't know what I'll be able to do for him while he's at the military base. Besides, I'm sure I'll be able to find a soldier, airman, or Marine that can probably help on the ground there. I'm hoping, at least provide some comforts there. But once he's able to transit from the base, we'll have a good network of support in place. And so, yeah, I think it's been really just humbling to see the amount of outreach and the amount of support for all this. And at this point, yeah, it's really TBD, a wait and see how the rest kind of plays out.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, it's an amazing story. It's the type of thing that I really have been trying to highlight, is the good that U.S. service members have been doing, because there's so much talk of the negative side of leadership, this, that, and the other thing. But there are leaders, and I've said it on the show 1,000 times, there are leaders out there doing the right thing. And I think the majority of service members that are boots on the ground are going above and beyond, acts of heroism, just giving everything that they have to support their Afghan families, because that's what they are. They're family members, like you said, and making sure that they do everything they can to support. I mean, there's still missions going on, civilians, veterans that are still going into Afghanistan right now, still trying to pull people out now with no airport, no support. This is just all ongoing, and it will be for some time. So I look at what you have done and what the group of people that did it with you. It is the example of what American service members do for their country and for other countries. So just for me, it's an honor to know that I can say I'm a veteran with people that do what you guys have done. It really is. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it's been, again, humbling to kind of be a part of this journey and experience, and so many great Americans, veteran and civilians, to kind of that rallied to this cause. And it's been like you said, but the mission continues, and there's still people working tirelessly right now today to continue to support their people and help and try to help get them out of there.
Yeah. And your mission kind of never stops. So now you've got Zak out, and obviously you still have work to do with him to be decided how you're going to handle a lot of that. But your organization, Patrol Base Abbate, has now kind of embraced this situation with the return to base program that you run through that, thinking about these men and women that did act in service, did have heroic acts, were there trying to help as many people as they can, providing them with support when they get home. First off, can you tell us a little bit about Patrol Base Abbate and what that organization is and how it got started?
Yeah. Last April, one of my team leaders committed suicide, and it's not my first suicide, right? But this one was particularly challenging in that in 2010, he had approached me and said that he was going to EAS, and that he had enlisted in 2008, had a couple scholarships out of high school to go play baseball, but enlisted because he wanted to, help fight the war. And he goes to Iraq with 3.5, goes on a MEU with 3.5, and then by the time he gets to me, he's been, in a little over 4 years, and he's one of my best team leaders, and he just has a kid. And he says, I was gonna extend, but I think I'm gonna EAS. We got this new baby boy, and it's okay, do what's best for your family, but just know that we really need you. And he comes back a week later and says, sir, you're my family too. I can't leave you guys at this point. And so a month later, he's a triple amputee. I'm picking up his body parts, and I'm talking to him as he dies in front of me about how he needs to make it home to play baseball with his son. And now this guy's a triple amputee. He's not going to be playing too much baseball with anybody. And very tough conversation, but he did find the will to live. And for 10 years, he was there, but his injuries were so severe that he was constantly in and out of surgeries, constantly in and off the pain meds. And I think he finally lost that battle. Within 30 days, I had 2 more of my Marines kill themselves. And these were Marines from when I was company commander. And so I'm a guy who, if there's an issue, I say I gotta try to see what I can do about it. I can't be passive and sit on the sideline. And so I started to try to define the problem, and I read dozens of the VA annual suicide reports, and I was looking for what are the trends and what's going on here. And year after year, the leading proximal cause of veteran suicide were feeling of disconnectedness and isolation, and almost 80% of veteran suicides are non-combat veterans. And I found that interesting, that almost twice as many non-combat veterans are committing suicide as combat veterans. And so I said, if it's not just a combat veteran problem, and it seems like that there's no direct correlation between combat and suicide, and we know it's a problem of people feeling disconnected and isolated. What's out there that's getting everybody in community? What's out there that's getting everybody connected? The answer was not a whole lot. If you were wounded or special forces, there was a lot of really great resources, and to me, that makes so much sense. You make them the main effort. The people who sacrifice the most, the people who've given them the most, should be at the front of the line. They should be the people who we allocate the majority of our resources to. But you can have a supporting effort. You can have a dish, and 20 years later into the global war on terror, it seems like we started and stopped there. And I said, let's make a place for anybody who served. And all these other organizations are going to tell you, you're not disabled enough. You're not wounded enough. You didn't kill Osama bin Laden. You can't check enough boxes. You don't rate our services. They're all kind of felt very exclusionary to your average soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine. And what I wanted to say is, hey, there are no boxes beyond service. If you served, you're in. You're admitted. We got a big tent and a big table, and you got a seat. And initially, so many service members couldn't believe that this could be a thing. They would say, well, I was just this, or I'm just this. And I wanted to say, there is no hierarchy here. It's not a competition. You served, it matters. We went out and I got 350 acres in Montana because I think good stuff happens out west, outside. And it was literally disbelief where people, I'm talking to an airman or I'm talking to a sailor and I'm saying, hey, we got a free of cost veterans retreat and we're doing the thing that you're into. You want to go? And the people will be like, you must got the wrong gal. You got the wrong guy. Like, what do you mean me? You're saying I could go to this thing? And I'm saying, yeah, you. And, so many people felt like of course, this is what I've been looking for. I've been looking for this tribe, but I never felt like there would be a place where people said I belong. And so we got this patrol base and we named it after Sergeant Hamid Abbate, one of my Navy Cross snipers, who's just one of the most legendary guys I've ever met. And I wanted to honor him. And we built it around interest based. And so we didn't do, what is Tom Schueman like? What is Tom Schueman into? I said, what are you into? Okay, do you want to fill a sandbag and walk point and start a club? Then we'll have the strength club. We'll have the fight club. We'll have the yoga club. We'll have the art club. We'll have the music club. We'll have the surfing club. We'll have the rock climbing club. Like, you name it. If you're into it, we'll build a support around it. And then we'll bring you out to Montana. We'll pay for it. We'll pick you up from the airport. And we'll put you in, we'll allow you to rest and refit. And I think it really, what's happening out at the patrol base, we've run 5 retreats out there, and what's happening out there is something very, very special. So we do these retreats Thursday. You get into Missoula on a Thursday night, you leave on a Monday morning, and it's work. You're out there with an e-tool, helping build up this patrol base. It's austere. It's not a vacation. It's time to improve yourself and improve, the patrol base. But you're also doing the thing that you love, and whether that's jujitsu, lifting weights, music, writing, and literature, right? And so it's been pretty incredible to watch how impactful these weekends are with the people who go out there. And then I said, we want to make it so you can return to base anytime. And so we started these local chapters, which are really sustainable and enduring. And so now we've got 50 different local chapters. And so you can have that community physically at any time, right? You don't just have to go to Montana to find it. And so this idea is that these local chapters are built around service and in a social component. And so we find a service organization in the community who's already doing the work. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We say, hey, are you doing the soup kitchen? Are you doing the beach cleanup? Are you doing, helping the homeless? How can we help? And we provide the manpower, and so, and after you go clean up the beach for the day, you go get tacos, and so you've got this, and it's challenging the narrative that veterans are broken, damaged, entitled. We're saying, no, we're not broken, damaged, disabled, whatever. We're actually out here as men and women of character who continue to serve. And so we help tribe, and then that purpose, that's service. That's our purpose, right? And we provide that through our local chapters, and every month they're meeting all over the country, and you've got veterans coming together, and it's such a mixed group. You've got the MARSOC guy, and you've got the Air Force admin clerk, and it's no egos. It's just like, hey, we know we have this commonality where we all served, and that's what we're interested in, right? And we're just and we've really been heavily pushing active duty, and we want active duty in our ranks because we know that the first year transition is the most vulnerable year.
100%.
And so we want to get left a bang. And we find that everything that's out there, all these resources, are after the crises, after the thing happened, right? And we said, well, what if we can get you in community, get your flank covered before you become exposed, right? Before you become vulnerable. And so we think that this is preemptive and proactive. And by getting active duty in our ranks as members, into their local chapters, into their interest-based club, whether that's hunting or whether that's mountain climbing, whatever. We get them all already plugged into that tribe, and so that they don't, so that when they go through that transition, they never feel alone, they never feel isolated, and so we're very invested in getting active duty members in our ranks as well, and when the 13 Marines and 12 Marines and the 11 Marines, the doc and the soldier were killed. One of our this is a Lance Corporal who's just incredible guy in our organization, Mason, came to me and said, "Sir, we've got to support these people and these units and these communities, when they come back." And I said, of course, all the best ideas come from a Lance Corporal. And I said, yeah, of course, that's what we need to do. And so I said, let's do Operation Return to Base and deploy our chapters, which we have chapters in North Carolina and we have chapters in Southern California. Let's deploy these chapters and make sure that as these service members come home, that they know that they are supported and that they've got a place where they can rest and refit. And that place is Patrol Base Abbate. And we're not going to make it. This is not about PB Abbate. This is not PB Abbate trying to get on the parade deck and take up anybody's family space. This is just, we've been in contact with the Remain Behind Elements, OICs, and we said, hey, what sandbags do you need filled? What support do you need? And let us do the stuff behind the scenes just to make these people feel connected and supported. And so we'll be deploying our Southern California and our North Carolina chapters in support of Operation Return to Base, which is to support the Marines and sailors who were in Kabul. And so we've got that in the works. And then actually this weekend, I'll go to New York City and I'll go to Engine 10, which is right there across from Ground Zero, and I'll fly 13 flags for each of the fallen. These flags have already flown in Afghanistan, and then we'll fly them on the 20-year anniversary over Ground Zero, and we'll get those flags to those 13. And so, Patrol Base Abbate its mission is to connect, to provide community, and to serve and to honor. And so, how can we find ways to serve and honor, and this is all in congruent with kind of our ethos. And so that's what we're up to. That's what we're doing.
It's great. And I love the idea. And I've talked to a couple organizations that have actually said the same thing that you said. It's trying trying to make it an organization where you don't have to check all these special boxes. It's very difficult. It's not as flashy a lot of times. You don't garner the same. We're Rangers, or we're airborne only, or we're MARSOC, or PJs. JTACs, whatever, Special Forces, Green Berets. They all have foundations that focus just on them. I'm not a combat veteran. I deployed to Uzbekistan. It was supportive of Afghanistan. I was a vehicle mechanic. I worked logistics, combat, cargo deployment, personnel deployment, that type of stuff. I love my service. It was amazing. Wouldn't change it for the world. Even the bad stuff, still wouldn't change it. Met some of the greatest people that I'll ever meet in my entire life. But like a lot of times I feel like I'm not part of some of these organizations after the fact because I don't have the same experience as them. But there are more and more doing what you're talking about, and just we're open. We're here. We're doing it just to get everybody together, and you do actually have commonality because you just are veterans, and you're veterans that just want to, like you said, retool, get back to basics, and get their heads right. So I applaud that.
Yeah, I mean, your service matters. We need people to do what you did, right? And you should be proud to tell of your service, and there should be a space for you. And you're right. It's not as sexy. By saying we're the Navy SEAL Foundation, people just start to write you checks, right?
Yep.
By saying that we're the Paralyzed Veterans of America, people say, oh, we feel bad. So when we say, oh, we're here we're here providing community and connection to veterans, and people say like, oh, are they disabled? It's like, well, they might be, but we just think that it's important to support and put veterans in community and tribe. There's a lot of, data behind that suggests that that's a powerful tool. And we're here to provide a inclusive community for everybody. Not as catchy as Navy SEAL Foundation or Disabled Veterans of America, right? That automatically opens it. But I'm willing to, have to have a more nuanced conversation with someone to explain why it is important that people who went to Uzbekistan still should have a place. And when you take the time to kind of explain why, and you still signed the check, you still signed a check. All those people, those C-17 people that were on those Air Force C-17s, I mean, that was pretty dangerous being on those C-17s. You had bodies falling. I mean, their Air Force C-17 crew, do you think that they ever imagined that they were going to have people jumping off their wings? It's like, and you can't, and so you still sign a check, and it doesn't matter where you're at or what community you're in. You still are all supporting the same thing one way or the other. And so, yeah, I think it's important to have an inclusive space that everybody feels like they belong.
For sure. Now, how can people get more information about what you're doing through the organization? How can they help? How can they donate? All that kind of stuff.
Sure. I mean, pbabate.org. You can sign up to help support Operation Return to Base, specifically if you're in one of those areas, to help the troops coming back from Kabul. And then, there's a donate button there on the homepage. But really, what I'm most interested in is I want active duty, National Guard, reservists, and veterans who have been out for 5 minutes or 5 years to go to the page and sign up. Pick your interest-based. What are you into? Jiu-jitsu, weightlifting, art. Pick your interest-based club, and then you put your zip code in there, and our local chapter is going to reach out to you and say, "Hey, we're Patrol Base Abbate, St. Louis. How you doing? Next month we're getting together. We're going to go help the puppies at the animal shelter, and then we're going to go out and grab pizza after. Welcome to your tribe." So that's what I want people to do is really just active duty guardsmen, reservists, and veterans to go sign up and join. And then we're at PB Abbate, PBABBATE on Instagram.
And in the Instagram, you can see the property out in Montana. You can see how they build it up, the whole deal. Like I said, I've been following you for quite some time on that, and it is beautiful. I mean, it really is. I mean, 350 acres out in Montana. You cannot complain. If you're a hunter or anything like that, you'll be drooling at that property. So even if you just want to check that out, get over to the Instagram and make sure you're seeing what they're doing out there. Now, as far as Zach, will you still be posting on his status once you get stuff? Will you be putting that out there a little bit, or are you going to kind of let that tail off a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably at least 2 more posts. Like one, he's here somewhere in the States, at the base. I think that's an update that everybody would appreciate. And then I think, we get him, there's a second post probably when he's in Texas and get him in a home there. And so I think there's at least probably 2 more posts that I owe everybody who was so great in their support. And then, I don't know, maybe there's who knows where the story goes, but there's
definitely a book deal down the road. I mean, you were an English teacher. I mean, how is this not going to be a book? I don't know if I can allow that to happen. Personally, I have to dog you just for that.
Yeah, maybe a book.
Maybe a book.
That's in the works.
Yeah. I'm not surprised, especially because Zach's an English teacher as well. So you guys got a good team right there. Sir, it has been just an honor to talk to you. Like I said, from just watching what you have gone through over just the past month and what you've put out there, and I'm sure what your family and the support that your wife gave you through all of this, the nights that you weren't sleeping, not easy on a family, and I'm sure she was there supporting you. But you did a great thing, and it's the type of thing that I want to keep highlighting, and I'm going to try to keep highlighting. So I thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing all of this with us.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And like I said, everybody get over to Patrol Base Abbate. Check that out. Fill out that form. Find your local chapter. Find your tribe. Get involved. Take advantage of all these amazing things that are going on. And you might find yourself out in Montana for a few days, just hanging out and having a great time and doing some good work.
Absolutely.
So, for Bulletproof Veteran Podcast, Major Schueman, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, brother. Semper Fi.
All right.